Hey guys, and welcome back to another IronWill podcast with me, Shane Warner, and
John Chase.
So what this podcast is all about is we are trying to get stories from people that have been through a traumatic experience in their lives and came out a different person.
Yeah, they have all created an iron will. So what is an iron will? A burning determination that cannot be stopped or hindered by anything, willing to do anything to get a desired outcome, extremely resilient. So what we like to say is just keep punching.
Yeah. So sit back and relax, and we're going to start the show. And today we have Missy Blake on the podcast with us. And how I found out about Missy was from Kendra Warner, aka K. Joe Warner, on Facebook. First off, I want to thank Missy for giving us the opportunity to learn from her story. Mm-hmm. And I want to take advantage of this opportunity I have to interview Missy to help people understand PTSD a little bit better. I'm just going to have Missy kind of introduce herself. And so here she is, Missy Blake.
Thank you. I'm Missy. I am a mother of 3 beautiful girls, one in heaven. I retired from the Air National Guard, from the Air Force, from a Red Horse Squadron, 200th Red Horse in Camp Perry, Ohio, in 2014. I had 15 good years in with the National Guard. And prior to that, I was actually in the process of that. Actually, I was a social worker also. I worked in Child Protective Services, and I was also a bereavement coordinator with local hospice. So I worked in grief counseling.
Okay.
So that's pretty much who I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
okay.
How I want to start off this podcast is by asking you what you wanted to be when you were growing up.
Oh, it was always twofold, and it's just exactly what I said. My whole life, I wanted to serve in the military, and I wanted to rescue babies. Actually, I was adopted as a kid, and so I come from a long line of military people. So it was just, I was always laser focused. I'm 4th consecutive generation military. Grew up with stories of my family in World War I, World War II, and just always knew I wanted to grow up and serve. And so that was what I planned to do. And having grown up with an open adoption, I just knew that I wanted to try to prevent what happened in my early childhood. My first year of life, actually, according to my records, I was in 9 foster homes and an orphanage, and 2 relative placements, actually, before I went to live with my adoptive parents when I was only 13 months old. So passed around quite a bit. Yeah. So I just knew that I wanted to grow up and kind of keep that from happening.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what I wanted to do. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to help kids because you got adopted, and that's what your passion was.
That was, there was a long history of mental health and substance abuse with my biological family. And so I just felt like kind of if I went into psychology, went into social work, that I could kind of change the world. Yeah. And then I figured out that the world didn't really want to be changed, but at least I could make a difference for a few people. So I did. I went to Ohio State, and I got my degree in psychology, and I worked in actually for the same agency that took custody of me as an infant. And
that's great.
It was yeah, it was a really good experience. I did that for several years.
The next thing on my list of what I want to know, and so can you tell me about your kids?
Three beautiful girls. My oldest daughter is Molly. She's actually 20.
Okay.
She was a sophomore at OSU.
LSU or OSU?
OSU, Ohio
Okay.
State
OSU,
University.
okay.
The Ohio State University, yes. She's a sophomore. She's very introverted, very quiet.
Yeah.
You walk into a room, you'd never know she's there. She's she's a fashion and marketing major. She's very much into theater and very talented artist, and actually is into costuming. She wants to go work for Disney and just help costume Ohio State's first production of Back to the Divine Comedy, which was the first showing of this program actually in the United States.
Huh.
It's an Italian program, and so that was pretty fantastic. That was just done in March, so that was awesome. And my other daughter, Katie, at home is 15. She's a sophomore in high school. Excellent swimmer. I mean, all things sports. She's awesome. She's got the greatest sense of humor, and she is really into she's a fierce defender of all things against racism and bigotry. And she has no fear.
Yeah.
She's just a fierce fighter.
That's cool.
Which is fantastic.
So is she more extroverted? Would you say?
Hardcore extrovert.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you got two. Yeah.
Yeah. Dominant type A personality. She is a tiger. So she's something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then there's my daughter Emily, and she was born in the middle of the two, and she would be 16, and she actually lived for 5 days. Okay. And she was born with 3 congenital heart defects that were actually separate defects, but her primary heart defect was hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So she had essentially 1 atrium and 1 ventricle, 2-chambered heart. And we had no idea during the pregnancy that this was an issue. So we expected her to just be born and come home from the hospital a few days later. Yeah. But her heart defects were terminal. And so after 5 days, we chose palliative care. And we held her for the last day of her life. And
is it a hard subject to talk about still?
No, it's not. I just there was just no real explanation for her series of defects. Okay. Her defects were so rare.
What year was this?
This was August of 2003.
Okay.
And
so it's pretty modern day.
Right. There were no at the time she was born, there were no babies born on record with her actual series of defects. Yeah. No babies born alive with that series of defects. They said maybe 1 in 200 million were born with 3 terminal heart defects all at the same time.
So did I think you said that you were waiting for a heart transplant, right?
We were.
Okay.
And we were hoping for a heart transplant. And then they determined that there were also some issues with her lungs. And that even with a heart transplant, like her best option for survival, or her best prognosis for survival, would be 16 years. And really it wouldn't be ethical.
Yeah.
Which as a social worker, I understand it wouldn't be ethical to take a heart for a baby that could survive longer.
Right.
So we opted for palliative care at that point.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be doing something for her, it would be doing something to her.
Yeah.
So we chose the palliative care just because it seemed like the right path for her and for the family at that point.
So did they tell you that this was like a 1 in, what did you say, 2 million case?
1 in 200 million.
Okay, yeah. So did they tell you this at that time?
At that time, they did.
Okay.
They did, yeah. They said, this is incredibly rare. Congenital heart defects are one of the most common causes of child death.
Yeah.
And so they said try again.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I was trying to find out if you would have been nervous to try again, and it sounds like it was explained to you to do that.
Right, and so, we did. Our daughter Katie was born. Actually, she was due on Emily's first birthday. She was born a week early.
That's crazy.
So, right. So both of Molly's sisters were born while she was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So, but no, she and Katie was born healthy, which was good. But no, Emily's heart defect itself was rare, but it was just a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
There is a genetic component to it that we now know about. So she is, and my girls are at higher risk of having children with congenital heart defects. It does tend to run in the family, and there is up to 50% risk.
Yeah.
Actually, for my girls of having a child with a congenital heart defect, because of this specific defect. But it is what it is. So it'll just have to be checked if they choose to have children. So,
yeah, sure. So then you had your second daughter, or third, and then you started volunteering for deployment. And was that because you still were grieving the loss of Emily, or?
It was kind of complicated because my first husband and I split as soon as Kate was born.
Okay.
She was just a couple of months old. She was actually, I think, 3.5 months old when we divorced, and we started the divorce process, and it took a while to get finalized. But so I was doing the single mom thing, and so he was moving forward with his life. I was moving forward with mine, and so I was grieving, trying to put my mind somewhere else. And so I thought maybe deploying would help focus on something other than Emily's death.
Yeah.
And
did you have any PTSD from this losing Emily, or was that more from your deployments, or what was that from?
No, the PTSD was just from the deployment.
Okay.
It wasn't from Emily. I actually processed Emily's death as well as anyone can process.
Yeah. Sure.
The loss of a child, it's complicated. It's always complicated, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And we moved to a space beyond that where we accept the reality of living without them. And the PTSD stemmed from, from the assaults that happened on the deployment. So, I started volunteering thinking that, I could serve. Because I wasn't really feeling like I was, really having much purpose in life after Emily passed away.
Yeah.
Feeling like I needed something more. And I just needed to feel whole again after her death. And I needed something to fill me up. And I just didn't have it here anymore. So, basically any deployment that they threw out, there was Hurricane Katrina, there was OEF rotations.
Yeah.
If it was here, if it was overseas, if it was a TDY, whatever it was, I raised my hand. It didn't matter.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, where it was, however long it was, I was willing to go.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. How many times did you deploy?
I deployed 3 times from June of 2005 until I came home in August